Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are on this fast forward planet, which is wrapped in so many layers of turbulent change. I've stopped counting them. Um, this show, Sustain What, is about sustainability of things like fisheries, like avoiding disasters, making sure the climate doesn't overheat, and the rest. And what sometimes we forget about the basic human systems that give us all the bounty that we thrive on as a species: fish, farming, and the rest, transportation. So today's discussion is about the safety of commercial fishing off the shore of Maine, where I live now. I've lived now for 5 years. New England, where I was born, in Rhode Island, it's pretty much the same issues. And actually, around the country and around the world, fishing in Canada is the most dangerous occupation. Here, it's only the second most dangerous occupation. And that is a lot of that mortality and injury and disability is avoidable. So how do we sustain the capacity to harvest the bounty of the sea and other resources is part of what I think about here, and especially as a member of this community along the wonderful coast of Maine. I think about it a lot because of some of the tragedies that our towns have faced in recent years. So we're going to explore paths to safer seafood harvests, lessons and solutions from Maine. They absolutely apply beyond the borders of the state and the 3,600 miles of its coastline. And I'm really glad to have this assembly of people you're going to meet in a couple of minutes. And Pat, hi, Pat and Josh from a company that helps mariners keep their boats safe and up to regulation. Liz Michaud, who's founded Green and White Hope, an organization that's helping through education and access to technology and safety equipment, helping communities and the fishing community offshore and onshore have safer practices. And Andy Constantine, I hope I got your last name right. I had my notes right in front of me.
Sokolowski.
Why did I say Constantine? I know Annie Sokolowski. I know someone with the name Constantine. Annie Sokolowski, who's from Voices of the Fleet and is the chair of the committee that is maintaining the Lebec's memorial to remember people who've been lost at sea doing this practice. So let's get started right away. First of all, just it's great to meet you all. And I'm going to meet some of you face to face in Lebec. And I might even be able to get down to Booth Bay Harbor before the end of the day.
Oh, nice.
Because we're heading down that way for other reasons. Anyway, let me just start with a couple of slides here to set the scene. Hold on one second while I figure out where my... there's no producer behind the scenes. It's just me. For centuries and centuries, Maine has been a center of fishing, commercial fishing. The technology has evolved. The boats have evolved from the early days to what we have now. And along the way, there are hazards at sea. I've got a whole list of the unfortunate incidents that have occurred. Some of these are with lobstering, some of them are with scallop draggers, and also just conventional fishing vessels looking for finfish. And all it takes is the wrong wave at the wrong time. A rope snaps. So many things can happen on a boat that can be devastating to those aboard. And if you're not ready, especially with the water temperature up here in the 50s, even in the summer, the survival is not assured. I'm going to start with this was a couple of years ago. Or was this just last year?
Last year.
Yeah, the first Maine commercial fishing
Today is Maine Commercial Fishing Remembrance Day, and more than 100 people gathered to honor and remember those who never came back from sea.
That ceremony was held in Lubec along the water. News Center Maine's Christian Harsa has more from those attending who are all too familiar with tragedy at sea.
I stand with many of you today, missing a lost fisherman. 2 years ago today, our family lost Tyler.
Tyler Michaud's story, a fisherman lost at sea, is a shared one amongst a crowd of more than 100 gathering in Lubec to pay their respects.
I'm not sure commercial fishermen get the recognition that they deserve for the type of work that they're doing and the food that they're providing.
The work and sacrifice, sometimes the ultimate sacrifice, earns July 21st, 2025, the designation of Maine Commercial Fishing Remembrance Day from Governor Janet Mills.
I feel like it's the start of some healing process.
And now we're poised for the second year, again, just in a week. And I wanted, Liz, for you to describe a little bit what prompted you to start Green and White Hope, how it relates to the issues we're talking about.
Yeah. So as the video referred, we lost Tyler. And when I say we lost, our family lost, but also communities lost. He was only just turned 18 and he touched so many lives. It was incredible, I will say, to see the impact that he had on the community all around for those that came out to help find him. And he was solo fishing that morning. And I would say it took many months. I like to refer to, I saw someone quote to say, sometimes you have to wait until the sea's calm before you can see clearly. And that's kind of what happened for me. Everybody deals with grief differently. So in my way, I had to wait until I saw a little bit more clearly and decided the place or what I had to do to fill that hole in my heart was to take some action to potentially help other families from not experiencing that. And so that also involved me getting a lot smarter. Even though I grew up in Down East Maine, I have family that has fished for 4 generations, not my direct family, but my uncles and cousins and people all around me. I took it for granted. It's just what people did. So I didn't maybe know as much as I should have. So I spent 6 months just researching to see, is there something that a new nonprofit could do that would be of value? And then I took those ideas, which evolved around increased safety education in both geography and in content, as well as advances in technology. That was my career prior to retiring and starting this. And how could we use technology advancements? And then the third was around improvements in engaging the community in rescue and response efforts. I took those to the Fisherman Forum in 2025, and I met some amazing people there. Josh and Pat being 2 of those. Annie and I connected before that, actually. Tyler sold his lobsters to Annie when she was working in the seafood industry. And so I met many others and fishermen and legislators, and I kind of shared the ideas and got validation that we could be of service. So when I left the Fisherman's Forum in 2025, founded Green and White Hope in his honor. And that was a year ago at the end of April to focus on these things. And the very first thing we did was launch a consolidated website of training availability that did not exist across the state of Maine. And the Maine Commercial Fishing Safety Council indicated they'd been wanting to do that for years. So that was our first launch. And since then, we've got several other projects that we've been working on, including Maine Commercial Fishing Remembrance Day.
Right. We're going to learn more about that from Annie in a couple of minutes. Let's get a little deeper into this. As you said, there's the social, there's the education, meaning the actual fishing education, and then there's technology and safety equipment. Just describe a little bit what you're offering there now. I've just got a screen grab here of a few of the things that are going on.
Yeah. So the picture on the left is a picture of some of the training courses that are available just through the safety education link on greenandwhitehope.org. And those are updated, in real time as things evolve. So we're happy to have that there. So if people need that kind of education, they can find a quick way to get it, both on traditional devices, mobile phones, etc. So we're continuing to work to expand the offerings there. The idea on the right was basically to expand on, when I said I did additional research, there are some things already that exist today that could be of great value in increasing the odds of survivability. And so we came up with an idea for a campaign called Pick Three, Someone's Waiting, where fishermen can just explore new options and maybe they hadn't considered before beyond the requirements that would increase that odds of survival, those odds of survival. And so we've produced some postcards that are meant to be a very personal, intimate decision for them to have a discussion with other experts or their families and decide, hey, maybe I don't wear a PFD all the time because I thought that they weren't comfortable. There's these new models now that might work for me. And I'm a huge fan of personal locator beacons. I think they can be completely game changing, and that's another one where we're focusing on and are hopeful to have a pilot project here very soon where we can distribute personal flotation devices with an embedded personal locator beacon. And if people don't know what that would do, I will just share, since we lost Tyler, there have been 8 other losses across the state of Maine over the last 3 years. And in several of those, the notification between the time the incident likely happened and the actual call out for help has been 6 or more hours. And as you have noted, if you're in the water, even for more than an hour in the Gulf of Maine, where we do have the coldest waters in the 48, your odds of survival are pretty low. So if we can shrink that time of notification by using a device like a personal locator beacon that can either manually or automatically, depending on what you purchase, be set off, that can send signals via satellite, and it can also send signals across boat-to-boat chains, AIS and VHF radio, to give a more immediate call for help that could save additional lives.
Right.
So we're really focusing on those campaigns. And then the third area that is also on the website, you see a big green mark there that says Community Orchestration Guide. In our experience, the Community Orchestration Guide, the community for all of these events come out in hundreds, but no one's accountable to help to organize them. So that's something we're working. We produced with the folks, on this call and many others, a document that will help communities create emergency response plan that will allow them to act sooner. So combine those things, say I'm going to get a notification within minutes versus hours that something has happened to someone, and then that the community can act, who is usually closest and knows the waters best, not to overtake the authorities. The authorities still have the lead there, but if they can act sooner and actually find someone, the probability of survival is just going to be much, much higher. So those are some of the things we're working on.
I'm going to go to Annie now, and then we'll get into the technology and keeping the boats safe. But also on the same point, I got to tell you, having covered a host of different kinds of disasters, earthquakes, flooding, on and on, even COVID, I was involved with our pandemic. Everything that all the experts constantly say, you can have a great plan, but if you don't actually run it, if you don't run the plan, you just don't have a clue how about the setbacks and the issues that can arise. This came out in COVID. They were saying, remember when there was no beds and stuff? It's because people had the sort of written plan, but not rehearsed and worked on. Annie, you deal a lot with sort of the culture and social aspects of this, and maybe you could weigh in a little bit on the issues Liz was just talking about and how to make preparedness more of a, not just a requirement, something you check off, but something that's in the culture.
The generational loss itself is more embedded into the fishing communities. I think it's more, the fishing community has its losses and then they carry on and continue to fish. So I think that's a big piece of this is how do we move past the normalcy of generational loss? I grew up between Lubeck and Campobello Island, so I grew up with many scallop draggers going down. My great-grandfather was lost off of Graham and Ann, and then I grew up with my parents and my grandparents going on search and rescues, and many losses over the years, and then being a seafood dealer, retiring as a seafood dealer in the state of Maine myself. Many of the names on the memorial are either from my childhood or fishermen that sold to me themselves. And I'm part of the core group that wrote the community orchestration guide with Liz. So I have my hand in that as well. And Liz and I are the two that are primarily doing the training in the harbors. So I'm still very much involved with that, the fishing community and the trainings that are going on within that.
And what do you sense the response is? I know, obviously, because you're part of the community and you've had your own history in this arena, it's probably easier to connect with people. But is there a way to facilitate how this can spread further? It's a long coast, and I'm going to talk in a minute with Josh and Pat, who are working along the entire coast too. How do you propagate the Annies and Liz's so you're in these communities having these conversations in ways that can spread the effectiveness? What's needed? What can we do? What can I do? What can anyone do?
Is that for me or is that one for Josh?
Well, let's say Annie and Liz, and then Josh and Pat.
Okay. I'll start. I mean, one of the ways we've started is we've briefed all the Maine harbor masters, and we're asking all the harbor masters to take a lead role in getting in their community and starting some of these things moving, and that's moving. But I will say, I'm going to say this is my personal underestimation. I don't know why I did, but I did. It takes a long time to get through municipality processes and an agreement to move some of these things forward. And even though, Lubeck is the first one, and they agreed very readily at the first meeting, it took a couple months to get the right players and get the right meeting set up. And I'm seeing that happen in similar locations. I've mentioned to you, like Lemoyne, I know is really trying. We have interest from Machias Bay communities. We have interest from down in Brunswick, etc. So there's people that are interested, but I think anyone who's involved in the communities themselves, and the fishing families, if they can help work with their harbors to get started, and to just play off what you said, one of the things we're trying to do, Andrew, is get ambassadors in all the harbors to work with the harbor masters. And as these plans are built, we're hoping to build people who can then consult with other communities. So the Lubeck community can then help consult with Cutler and Machias Bay, etc. So it can't be just us.
You're very present on Facebook, which is great. Social media gets a bad rap, but are you finding that online tools are helping?
In the fishing community, Facebook is huge. So yeah,
so just that it's good to be there.
It's good to be there. It's hard to, surveys and email and things like that. That I think everybody's tired of that a bit.
Right.
An exhaustion. So I mean, best of all worlds is face to face. We just did a mini survey at some of the training courses and asked how people like to be engaged and communicated, and definitely dockside was As long as it's well orchestrated. Let me be clear, nobody likes them to just be popping down on the pier or on the dock when they're ready to go. That's not the best.
No, for sure. So let's get to sort of the boat side stuff. Josh and Pat, maybe you could introduce yourselves and your company, Ready Marine, and talk about the work you're doing expanding up and down the coast.
Go ahead, Pat.
I was going to rock, paper, scissors you. Yeah, so Ready Marine Safety started about 3 years ago. Josh and I are pals from long before that. Basically, Liz mentioned a moment ago that Green and White Hope sort of was inspired by tragedy, and so many, as she mentioned, so many more losses have happened since the start of Green and White Hope. And I think that really exemplifies sort of the need for organizations like that to pop up. For Josh and I, it didn't really start out of tragedy. It more started out of a recognition of need, a recognition of a gap in what's currently going on in the fishery. And Andy, you mentioned a moment ago, or you asked the question, sort of, what is needed. And one of the gaps that our company tries to fill is that right now safety is viewed as a requirement for regulatory purposes. To be able to operate a commercial fishing vessel, you have to have X, Y, and Z. And what our company tries to do instead is to view safety as an essential part of that vessel's operation, an essential part of everyday operations on that vessel. And so one of the ways the way that we go about that is to try to take the burden of safety equipment off of captains and owners. There are over 100 different items on a commercial fishing vessel that are related to safety that need to be kept track of. That sounds like a big number for a 40-foot boat or a 45-foot boat. But the reality of it is, when we've got a picture of 4 guys in survival suits in front of us, and they're in the water. Each one of those survival suits has a zipper that needs to be maintained. It has a light on it with an expiration date. It has a whistle on it that needs to be in operating order. So just in those 4 survival suits that you see on the screen, there are 16 different items that have to be kept track of, and it's a real burden for each individual vessel owner to be able to keep track of all of that stuff. What we do is we keep track of all of that stuff for them and also show them how to use it. So many commercial fishermen, they have to have this mix of gear on the boat to be able to operate for the day, but they may not necessarily know how exactly to use an EPIRB or how to launch their life raft or expiration date slip that they just don't know about or aren't necessarily on the front burner for them. On the front burner for them is hitting the key and providing for their families every day. It's not climbing up onto the top of the wheelhouse and checking their EPIRB batteries every morning. So that's part of the burden that we shift onto our company. And in turn, it creates an opportunity for those captains and owners to have more bandwidth to do things like drills, to do things like spend time going over safety equipment with their crew, with a guy that just showed up to work for the day. If they don't have to worry about all of that other stuff, they have more bandwidth to do things like teach their new crew member where the life raft is and how to launch it, things like that.
And you're expanding. Josh, maybe weigh in a little bit on, you guys split up the coast essentially. And again, it's a 3,600 mile long coast, longer than California's coast.
Yeah, no, we, so it's, as Pat mentioned, it kind of just started with the two of us kind of, almost out of frustration, but really, seeing an idea there and Liz mentioned, some of the best ways to interview people. And so we took this idea and took it to some, a couple old timers, a couple peers down in Stonington, and said like, hey, what do you think of this idea? Would you invest your own money in having this supported for you? And we got a pretty resounding yes from that community, and that was really where it started. We were both working full-time jobs at the time, and we just started putting it together. Pat built, hand built basically a starter version of the software system that we use today to start tracking stuff, and we went from there, and just via word of mouth from those few guys, and then pounding the docks. We are up over 120 vessels now, 115 vessels. And it started in Stonington, and now it's basically Eastport to Gloucester at this point. So Pat broke out first, doing it full time. I stayed, I was a tug captain in Boston at the time, and I stayed doing that until just this last fall, where we started to get to the place where it felt like we do better for ourselves and do better by our clients to roll me out full time, and so now we're going at it, and that's kind of what it's been, just kind of DIY, little bit of trial and error. We try to keep those errors to a minimum, but
Yeah.
It's been a cool journey, learning to kind of put our money where our mouth is on when we saw a problem and we want to fix it. And I think we've been pretty effective at doing so. And it's still, you mentioned that it makes me think of the community action plan and things like that. I mean, I still get referrals for new clients from those first two guys that we got, and
Right.
just, it makes me think of like just the impact that actually interfacing with the community in a real way does. There's lots of entities out here that want to sit kind of around the commercial fishing, but if you're not willing to get down there on the boat and get a little pogey juice on you to talk to somebody, then you're not going to get anywhere.
That does count for a lot, for sure. I want to circle back to the remembrance part. This is an important practice, and again, what's cool about the work that you're all doing is you're looking backward but also looking forward. These remembrance days are very much, from what I can see, and I'll see more when I go to Lubec next week, about sustaining the kinds of conversations you're talking about right now. How do you cut the sense that some of this is inevitable and move toward practices that can really reduce the number of names being added to these monuments. And now it's, I think, Liz, there's how many ceremonies up and down the coast? Like almost a dozen maybe, or is it more than that now?
There's 10 right now. There's 2 full ceremonies, but there's 8 more wreath layings that aren't necessarily full ceremonies, but yeah, all the way from Eastport to Portland.
That's great. And this is all on the 21st.
All on the 21st.
Great.
Yeah.
I wanted to, Annie, I was reading this piece you wrote about ambiguous loss, and again, dealing with the idea of naming names and keeping track of, as I said earlier, the cost of the things that we don't think about. You go to the market and you buy scallops, and $28 a pound. You're not thinking how many lives are behind that kind of the things that we rely on. Can you talk about ambiguous loss, how you feel it's experienced around the coast, and what pathways go forward around that?
Yeah, ambiguous loss and ambiguous grief, I feel, is something that is not really addressed and dealt with really on any level within the fishing community at this time. I am part of the Veterans Yoga Alliance. I'm a licensed yoga teacher, so I work with the Veterans Yoga Project, and I'm certified in post-traumatic stress disorder. So we deal with ambiguous loss and grief within the veteran population for veterans, of course, in combat. So this is something that happens within the fishing community as well when we have fishermen that are lost at sea. When there's somebody that hasn't been returned, there is this continuous grieving that occurs. And that's what ambiguous loss or grief is. So there's no closure. There's no way to have that closure. So this is what keeps occurring when there's no body recovered, and when these communities have to keep searching. And this is kind of where we tie in to the search and rescue and the devices. It's for that people to have that recovery of the body so that they can have that closure.
Right.
They kind of tie in together. The mental health wellness piece, that's not really happening as well within the communities right now, that I was talking about, the generational loss that keeps happening, and what we were talking about with the communities. There's one loss after another, so everybody, it just keeps resurfacing. The fishermen that are lost at sea, there's one loss compounding on top of the next. And this ambiguous loss, it keeps happening over and over and over again. So the healing is not really occurring or happening right now.
For sure. Well, I'm really glad that you do all that work, both with veterans and with people actively working the sea. It's a vital part of what needs to happen. Just to give some people who are might be watching here from Ohio or the like, who's deal with other arenas like farming or transportation on the roads. I thought I'd play a few seconds from Jacob Knowles, the superstar lobstering YouTuber, who I think participated actively as a pilot in the search for at least for Tyler. Is that right? And perhaps for others.
He did.
So here's, most of his episodes have a certain amount of humor to them. I think he's done a great job of explaining what lobstering is, along with building a great audience. But here's just a quick sense of what it's like out there.
See who? Yeah, boy. Usually this is right about the time of day I say I can see the last one, but that's not happening today. I can barely see the next one, let alone the last one. Nice roll. Ow! Yeah, sharp, bub. That gap's sharp. Ready to buy it all again? I broke my gaff in half the other day on accident.
So it's, they're doing hundreds and hundreds of traps a day in conditions, winter, spring, summer, going out there. And anyone who's been at sea in that kinds of conditions know that if you're doing something hundreds of times a day, maintaining vigilance at the same time is really hard. So that's part of the reality that you guys are all working on, which I think is great. We're going to close things out in a few minutes. So just wanted to get any last thoughts from you on what we can do together. Obviously, as you say, meeting on the dock is the best thing for sure. But is there anything I can do online that can help spread this conversation? I wanted to ask you also about going further down the coast. The Gloucester has had awful tragedies in recent years. They have their monument that was there. It is. It was launched in 1925 to all their lost fishing folk, and this recent disaster was just horrific. Is there much discussion further down the coast? I think, Josh, you said you guys go down into New Hampshire, maybe Massachusetts. Is there a coastal and or eventually national way to look at fostering some of these practices? Maybe Josh first.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right, Alex. We do, we're on North Shore, Mass, and Cape Ann as well. And yeah, to me, from our perspective, where we sit running our business and some of what our motive is, it is about, shifting that perspective on safety equipment being, at best a burden, and in reality a barrier to like the whole system of fishing, right from community, like fishing, parents and offspring sitting at the dinner table at the end of the day, through the product actually coming over the rail and getting sold. Like, it's having people's safety and their integrity of their self be part of the system of that, as opposed to something that's kind of seen as in the way of that.
Exactly.
That's what we kind of want to change. Again, getting back to where we kind of came from, we saw, we grew up around people that are very proud of their equipment. It's reflective of their, the integrity of their business and their pride, and these are people that like to take care of their engines and take care of their gear and take care of their boat, and they to the point of employing people to come and do that. And there's also camaraderie around that sort of stuff. People feel part of a group, that they don't want to associate with the people with the trashy equipment or the trashy gear, or people are either in a state of aspiration where they're working hard to get up. They want to buy a better boat that can get them out on more days and things like that. And so what I see is that, having your safety quotient, to use a technical term, so all the way from your equipment through your personal capability and training, be a part of almost a fraternal or a community pride in your whole system, rather than something that just needs to get taken care of as a tangential aspect of fishing. That's the shift that we're trying to take by taking the burden off. And people are spending money with us, obviously, and so we want them to be happy that they're doing that and proud of what they've got. And I think shifting people's safety quotient and condition of their gear and knowledge of their gear into something that they're just as proud of as they are the paint job on their boat. That's where that doesn't have to just be in one harbor in Maine somewhere. That can kind of transcend the whole industry.
Yeah. So maybe a last thought or two from Liz and Pat, and from Pat, that'd be great. Liz, we didn't mention the green and white. Where did green and white come from? And you had told me, so maybe you could.
Yeah, green and white is our Tyler's buoy colors. So that's a subtle nod to him. And to kind of go back to your, like, do we work across more than Maine? We absolutely do. So while the primary focus has been in Maine, and I will say I even more so have concentrated a lot in Down East Maine and connected with a lot of other partners across the state of Maine, as we can see with what's happening with Remembrance Day. But we also work with organizations in Massachusetts, and I am a member of the Fish Platform, which is an international organization working for fishers across the world. And so we can learn lessons from things that happen there as well. And just even at the 1st of April, end of March, 1st of April, we had the first U.S. meeting with the Fish Platform. And in that meeting, we had people from Washington State, Oregon, Alaska, and Massachusetts, etc. And we all agreed that we would continue sharing best practices and lessons learned. And for instance, the orchestration guide has now been shared with those folks in the West Coast who want to tailor something, as well as Alaska, because our fisheries are different, right? We are very much a small boat fishery here. They're big boat fisheries in Alaska, for instance. But they are very excited about the content and want to take that and leverage it how it makes sense for them. And so that will continue. We're supposed to meet again in 6 months from then, so in the fall, and then come together again in person a year from now. So we're gonna keep that momentum going across not only Maine but the U.S. and the world.
Great, Annie. Any last thoughts, ideas for amplifying what's going on?
As far as Massachusetts, well, incidents were occurring in Massachusetts. I was in contact while those incidents were occurring. The guide was shared with the officials there because I do have really great working relationships with them. But of course, the strength of the guide is for implementation prior to an incident.
Right.
But they did have and were given access and were in communication with me during those incidents for whatever best practices they could use during that time. And during the global seafood event in Boston, I met with all the Massachusetts officials during that time as well. So just so people are aware of that. But I do want to say that any safety improvement at all to any vessel represents somebody's loved one. So, and anything that we can do does represent a life.
That's great. And Pat and Josh, and then...
Yeah, I guess I'll just end with a quick story. Annie, I really appreciate the ideas that you shared around ambiguous loss, and this story kind of has a lot to do with that. I was sitting around a campfire this past weekend with a bunch of friends up north that don't necessarily have a lot of ties to the fishing community, and one of them was talking about how he went to a small takeout and got a fried clam dinner, and when he got the bill at the end of the night, he was astonished that his fried clams were $36 for a handful of clams. And, he was kind of complaining about it a little tongue in cheek. And I said, well, have you ever been clamming? And he said, well, no, not really. And I said, well, if you want to know how good you've got it, go clamming for a day. Because
absolutely.
Heart. And, when people think about the fishing community in Maine, they think about, big lobster boats with, life rafts up on the roof and EPIRBs that can tell your position and life jackets and survival suits and all of that stuff. Clammers go out in a 16-foot aluminum skiff to some of these outer islands and clam for the entire day in the middle of the winter. And we just saw how dangerous that can be this last winter when we lost 2 clammers down in Jonesport. And I think organizations like Green and White Hope and companies like Ready are really well poised to make a difference in some of those sectors of the industry that you don't necessarily think about when it comes to safety gear. And if you have a chance to come down to Fishing Remembrance Day in Booth Bay, we're going to be showcasing the vessel that we just built that's got man overboard technology on it. It's got personal EPIRBs located in PFDs. We're going to be showing off some of that equipment that can really move the needle on some of these things that have happened in the community in the last, well, definitely in the last 3 years, but in the recent past and in the fishing community here in Maine and abroad.
Thanks for saying that, Pat.
We just lost Elton as well. He was clamming in Millbridge. Yep. The last fisherman we just lost in Millbridge as well was clamming.
Yep. I think it is really important to note that all of us are working towards all fisheries. It's easier to focus or think about lobster because that's for sure the largest, but there are lots of other dangerous portions of fisheries. Clamming elver season is not the greatest when they're going out at night by themselves. There's a lot of really dangerous scalloping,
Well, one thing that's come up here pretty clearly is that it's the technology is the boats, everything is very variable. And that's where the cultural sort of building safety culture is key, because each one of those places will have its own ideas that you can probably adopt and spread as well. That there's no cookie cutter thing here. And that's why, we think about regulations as driving change. Especially as Reddy Marine here has said, if the regulations are seen as an obligation, that's never going to really drive change. I actually in earthquake zones in Nepal, when they had their terrible earthquake, the most recent bad earthquake, I was reporting on that, and they have building codes, they have regulations for how to build the buildings, but they weren't being followed. And it ends up that where you see the change in how communities build buildings, it's because of a cultural norm that evolves. It's not some rule. Washington and state houses have their place, but you have to have that cultural element too. Well, I really thank you all for the time you put in today, and I hope to meet at least some of you in Lubec, maybe Booth Bay Harbor, on the 21st. And as soon as we're done with this broadcast, you can share the video on Facebook. It's on Facebook, LinkedIn, and etc. And maybe we can revisit some of these more detailed questions going forward. I hope you don't see this as an indulgence, but I'm a songwriter as well as a journalist, and I did write a song about this stuff, about these issues, about history, and about honoring the full effort it takes to harvest the bounty from the sea. I'm just going to, as a closing thing, I'm going to play the song. It's on YouTube. It hasn't been released formally yet. Next week it'll be released. And just thank you to Annie, to Liz, to Josh, to Pat for coming on Sustain What. And let's keep this idea of spreading resilient, proactive safety culture, and then response culture as well when the worst happens. And you can't prevent the worst from happening all the time. So responsiveness too. So here's the song, and thanks again for all that you're doing. For those who dine on lobster tails while sipping fine Chablis, here's a song about the cost of harvesting the sea. Way down east a rugged fleet hauls bounty from the sea. But drop your guard, life will be hard, the ocean you must heed. When storm gusts howl and chimes ring foul, there is no time for sleep. The sea will steal all that you love and sink it in the deep. In the deep, rope snaps like a shotgun blast. Wave strikes and a boat sinks fast. Boot slips and a stern man's lost at sea. Don't drop your guard, the ocean you must heed. A rope snaps like a shotgun blast. Wave strikes and a boat sinks fast. Boot slips and a stern man's lost at sea. Don't drop your guard, the ocean you must heed. You must heed. On granite slabs in old Lubeck, new names are etched with oaths of fishing friends and family lost amid their toil. Teen drowned, pulling traps alone, dragger flipped in the storm. Dad and son on a scallop run, never made it home. Made it home. Rope snaps like a shotgun blast, wave strikes and a boat sinks fast. Boat slips and the stern man's lost at sea. Don't drop your guard, the ocean you must heed. Well, rope snaps like a shotgun blast, wave strikes and a boat sinks fast. Boot slips and the stern man's lost at sea. Don't drop your guard, the ocean you must heed. Even with the dangers and the fog and chill and chores, the sea calls to a certain breed who love life far from shore. So as you dine on lobster tails while sipping fine Chablis, raise a glass and say a prayer for those who put to sea. Down east a rugged fleet hauls bounty from the sea. But drop your guard, life will be hard, the ocean you must heed. So thank you very much for spending time here, and let's keep this all moving forward. Thanks again. This is Andy Refkin. This is a Sustain What webcast, and hold on. Whoops, I want to get rid of that. Put that up.
Thanks for having us, Andy.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Get on with the day. Thank you again, and let's stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you, Andy.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.